Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode recap and thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the B segment of episode 15 of The Loud House, Save the Date. We begin this segment at Royal Woods Elementary School, and it's lunchtime. Lincoln and Clyde are sitting with 5 other classmates. They're apparently not important enough to have names since the credits just list them as classmates 1 through 5. But in any case, Lincoln found that he has a sloppy Joe in his pants, and the 5 classmates are eager to point out that it's from Ronnie Anne, based on the note that was attached to it. They also gleefully point out that there's a heart on there as well, and they proceed to tease Lincoln about Ronnie Anne liking him, and the prospect that he may like Ronnie Anne as well, but Lincoln is insistent that he isn't. This doesn't stop the 5 classmates from singing the old "Sittin' in a Tree" song, before Lincoln finally reaffirms not only that he doesn't like Ronnie Anne, but he does so very insistently. He lists off Ronnie Anne's unflattering qualities and caps it all off saying that he'd rather lick the bathroom floor than kiss her, who he calls a weirdo. It's only after that when a gasp is heard. As Lincoln turns around, he says the name of the one who gasped, and it was indeed Ronnie Anne, making her first formal appearance in the series. Ronnie Anne has a surprised and hurt expression on her face before it quickly turns into an angry glare as she storms out of the cafeteria. Clyde comments that it seems Lincoln's words may have actually hurt her feelings, but Lincoln responds that Ronnie Anne is the toughest girl at Royal Woods Elementary School, so he's certain that his words had no effect on her. After school ends and Lincoln returns home, he's greeted by Lori, who's throwing items at him and calling him a monster. We see that she's been crying a lot because she has a lot of her mascara running. It's not a pretty sight, to say the least. It turns out that Lori is angry at Lincoln for making Ronnie Anne cry. Lincoln is surprised to hear that Clyde's guess turned out to be right, and he assures Lori that he didn't try to hurt Ronnie Anne's feelings on purpose. But then he questions why Lori, or how Lori found out about this. It turns out Bobby told her before breaking up with her. And Lori also answers Lincoln's question of why Bobby would care about whether Ronnie Anne cried or not by showing him a picture and revealing that Ronnie Anne is actually the younger sister of Bobby. And Bobby said that to Lori that he couldn't date someone who was related to someone who hurt the feelings of someone that he is related to. After Lincoln makes an offhand comment that he thought Ronnie Anne was raised by trolls after his surprise over her and Bobby being related, Lori comments that this was apparently the talk that Bobby didn't like about him saying towards Ronnie Anne, and she demands that Lincoln set things right with Ronnie Anne. Although he tries to call Ronnie Anne to appease his oldest sister, she says that's not good enough. She recites that actions speak louder than words and that Bobby must see Lincoln on friendly terms with Ronnie Anne. It turns out Lori did manage to convince Bobby to at least give this scene a chance, namely allowing the 2 Loud siblings present to go on a double date with the 2 Santiago siblings. They're going to Jean Juan's French Mex Buffet, which, as the show calls it, fusion cuisine. Lincoln says he was about to repeat that he'd rather lick the bathroom floor than kiss Ronnie Anne, but Lori actually lifts up the end table and threatens to crush Lincoln with it unless he complies, so Lincoln goes to iron his khakis, he says, but first he calls Clyde through the walkie-talkie to ask for his help. But Clyde only partially listens once he heard the Bobby and Lori broke up part. He does his own version of the "Sitting in a Tree" song, and he's much more cheerful about it. Eventually, the time of the double date has come, and outside a French Mex buffet, Lincoln and Lori, in more formal wear than we're used to seeing them, greet the two Santiago siblings in their usual outfits. Though when Bobby talks, it's clear he still does like Lori, but he tries to pass it off as being indifferent. At Lori's nonverbal insistence, Lincoln tries to compliment Ronnie Anne. It's here where she talks for the first time. She's voiced by Brianna Yeed. And Ronnie Anne's response is simply repeating the word weirdo and wording it in a way that shows that she's still not happy about what Lincoln had said earlier, and she just wants to get this over with. As all four of them enter the restaurant, though, they're greeted by Clyde, who's posing as one of the staff members, though Lincoln seems to be the only one who actually recognizes Clyde, and he has a pretty good idea what Clyde is doing there. Clyde assures Lincoln, though, that he has no intentions of interfering with him reconciling with Ronnie Anne. No, he has his mind set on something else, and he pretty much not only ignores Bobby while waiting on everyone, but he also seems to, accidentally hits him, like when he's lifting up a cover for a dish and such, and he even takes away Bobby's chair, so the poor guy has to sit on a potted plant. And while Lincoln tries to be courteous to Ronnie Anne, he offers her a chair. She just takes the chair next to it, and he tries to make small talk, but Ronnie Anne is still not in a pleasant mood. But there is a part where a mariachi band, the band leader is voiced by Carlos Elizarraqui, who wants to perform, as they put it with great gusto, Musica! But Lincoln says, no musica. And that's kind of the running gag throughout the show, the segment. The segment's running gag is that the mariachi band keeps popping up wanting to perform music, but being stopped from doing so. But anyway, the double date doesn't seem to go as well as the older siblings would hope, but after they both say simultaneously that they want to go to the buffet line, Lori says that this is proof that they are meant to be, and yeah, she throws the word literally in there too. And as they do head off, Lincoln can't help but imitate his sister's line just then. And it's that point where Ronnie Anne actually giggles, and she concedes that her brother and Lori are very cheesy together. And this is where the two actually start to bond with each other. They reminisce about times where Lori and Bobby have been overly mushy over their relationship, and they gleefully laugh about this. But the two older siblings actually do see their younger siblings getting along, and Bobby does say he wants to get back with Lori, saying it's been torture without her. And after the two younger siblings share a moment of imitating their siblings taking selfies with each other, there's a brief moment of silence, but then we actually have something important. Lincoln apologizes to Ronnie Anne for the hurtful things he had said earlier. Ronnie Anne, in turn, apologizes to Lincoln over the sloppy joe she sent his way earlier as well. And they both share a very heartwarming smile with each other, before their older siblings arrive to announce that they are back together and commemorate it with a reunion selfie. And Clyde apparently snuck into the picture. That was actually pretty funny. Unfortunately for Lincoln, though, things take a turn for the worse when the 5 classmates from earlier arrive in the restaurant. One of the classmates' mom dropped him off, and apparently will pick him up at a later time. So, with Clyde's help, Lincoln tries to sneak out of the restaurant without the classmates knowing that he's there, but unfortunately, things don't go too well. It doesn't help when Lori says they need their check and wondering where the cute little waiter is, which gets Clyde wanting to go see Lori again. Unfortunately, the classmates do see Lincoln. They see Ronnie Anne in the restaurant. They recognize that Lincoln's wearing khakis, which they call date pants, and they decide to tease Lincoln some more. In a poorly thought out manner of saving face, Lincoln recites what he said earlier about Ronnie Anne. Lori, though, calls him out on it. She and Bobby both have angry glares on their face, but Ronnie Anne has more clearly her expression on her face. She even starts to cry as she tries to run out of the restaurant. Lincoln, though, is able to convince her not to leave just yet, and she begrudgingly hears him out. He actually pulls up a podium, and he even addresses the whole restaurant how he hurt someone who deserved better. He then concedes to Ronnie Anne that he actually had a good time with her, and realized that there is more to her than what he first saw of her. But he also comments on Laurie's words of action speaking louder than words, and he wants to show Ronnie Anne how much he cares about her, and he offers her his hand. Ronnie Anne takes it, he pulls her up on top of the podium, and the two share a kiss. The two oldest siblings are happy about this and are back together again. And Clyde angrily calls Dr. Lopez over a Laurie emergency. The next day, Lincoln is being teased by the classmates, but he begrudgingly accepts it as he speaks to the audience, thinking that at least it means him and Ronnie Anne are on pleasant terms with each other. Ronnie Anne then appears, though, and slaps Lincoln, saying how dare he kiss her, and recites the very words that Lincoln had said to her indirectly 2 other times before she storms out of the cafeteria. This actually gets the classmates to stop teasing Lincoln, and rather they show their sympathies for him before they leave. But as Lincoln is the only one left, an ice pack slides into the cafeteria with a note on it. It turns out that Ronnie Anne's act just now was a rouge. She was hoping that by pretending to still be mad at Lincoln, this would cause the classmates to stop teasing him, and the ice pack was meant as an apology for slapping his face and hoping to help it heal. Lincoln gleefully points out that there's a heart on the note, and then he tucks it away in his pocket just before Clyde shows up, who didn't see what Ronnie Anne had actually had in mind, so he offers to cheer his friend up, and the segment ends with the two boys dancing to the mariachi band as they finally get to perform their music. Now, this segment, as you can probably guess, is a very big deal because it marks the formal appearance, that is to say the first time she showed up on screen, for Ronnie Anne Santiago, who initially appeared in Heavy Metal. And I did say I would go into more details about Ronnie Anne once we got to her formal appearance, and here we are now. So, as I mentioned before, back when Heavy Metal was the only Ronnie Anne appearance that aired on TV, I noticed a lot of people were quick to jump to conclusions about the character and quick to assume the worst about her. Even when people pointed out we barely knew anything about Ronnie Anne, there were some who were insistent that, oh, we don't know a lot, but we know plenty about her, and others even denied the fact that Ronnie Anne liked Lincoln at all, insisting that she only picked on him for kicks and giggles. But I think this segment proves those people wrong, that no, we didn't know plenty about Ronnie Anne, and no, she didn't pick on Lincoln just to torment him. Because, yeah, I don't think you would cry if someone that you didn't like said they'd rather lick a bathroom floor than kiss you. It was a nice way to show that despite her rough exterior, Ronnie Anne does have a tender side to her, and that, yeah, she actually had her feelings pretty hurt about how Lincoln said those things about her. And this is something else I should mention. Some people thought that this segment vilified Lincoln, but I don't agree with that assessment, and that's because the first time Lincoln hurt Ronnie Anne's feelings, it was pretty clearly established it was an accident. He wasn't trying to hurt Ronnie Anne's feelings, and he was honestly surprised that his words actually even did affect her the way they did. But the second time around when he said it, yeah, that was on Lincoln, I have to say, because he just got to know that Ronnie Anne wasn't as bad as he initially thought, but he still went and did that just to save face, so yeah, I think that was a bad call on Lincoln's part. But to be fair, he did make up for it, and he owned up to it, so good on him. Oh, and another thing I liked about this segment was it did address another complaint people had just from watching Heavy Metal alone. Some people accused Ronnie Anne of being a karma Houdini, that is to say someone who got away with their bad behavior, but I feel that Save the Date is contradictory to those claims. While Ronnie Anne may not have necessarily had to pay the price for it at the end of Heavy Metal, the beginning of Save the Date showed that Ronnie Anne the consequences of her less flattering means of picking on Lincoln, and it was over the course of the segment she actually learned that she could actually talk to Lincoln and hang out with Lincoln without having to resort to those less flattering means of getting his attention. So, and actually, it wasn't until Ronnie Anne was nicer to Lincoln when she actually formed a stronger relationship with him. Oh, and I should stress this, the Lincoln and Ronnie Anne are actually not dating with each other by this point. They're, even in later appearances, they're only still friends at this point, but to be honest, I expected that because they are only 11 years old after all. Having said that, though, that doesn't mean they can't ever get together in the future. Like, who knows? Maybe there'll be a segment or an episode in the future where we actually get to see their adult life. Maybe they'll be dating, if not married, by that point. So I say this to the Ronnie Cullen shippers. Don't worry. Just because they're not dating now doesn't mean they never will. So hang in there, Ronnie Cullen fans. And I should talk about Bobby too, since this was when they actually revealed in the show that Bobby and Ronnie Anne are actually siblings. Supplementary material ended up revealing that earlier on, but in the show itself, this was the first time it happened. A lot of people gave Bobby a hard time for breaking up with Lori over Lincoln accidentally hurting Ronnie Anne's feelings, and yeah, it's not the best thing to do, but if you actually watch the segment, it makes it clear that Bobby actually didn't want to break up with Lori either. Because we should remember, Bobby really is a good guy. It's just he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And what I saw when I watched the segment, it was clear to me that Bobby's reasons for breaking up with Lori over it was more of a misguided view of honor before reason, like saying family honor, and that even though it doesn't make sense to break up with someone just because they're related to someone for something that the other relative had done. But the bottom line I'm saying is that it wasn't such a cut and dry example. It wasn't just Bobby broke up with Lori just to get back at her or anything like that. He actually does care about Lori, but he cares about Ronnie Anne too, and he can't stand to see her feelings hurt. So you could say that, in a way, it showed that Bobby really does care about Ronnie Anne. It's just that he had a misguided way of viewing that, but given that he's not very bright, it's not hard to see why he would have that honor before reason mentality over it. And what else can we say? Oh, we did get to know a little bit. I did like Brianna Yeed. We did get to hear her as Ronnie Anne. I liked what we heard of her. What I was disappointed by, though, was Ronnie Anne didn't get a lot of dialogue in this segment. I mean, I liked what we saw, I liked what we heard, and we did get to hear enough to know that there's more to Ronnie Anne than meets the eye, but I did wish that we got to hear more from her. I mean, we know that she, like Lincoln, thinks that Bobby and Lori's relationship is on the mushy side, but we didn't really get to see a little bit more about her. It would have been nice to see more about her relationship with Bobby besides that. Though we do get that in a later segment, I suppose, but I still think it would have helped if we had... I feel if we had heard more of Ronnie Anne talking or got to hear more of her thoughts on them, on certain things, that might have helped some people who still might be a little sour towards her. But for me personally, I still did think that at least it was enough to show that, yeah, Ronnie Anne didn't leave the best first impression with Lincoln, but she's actually not bad at heart. She really is a good person deep down. Just made some bad choices for misguided reasons. And I did mention this before back in Heavy Metal. I do feel that that I never personally had an issue with the loving bully trope, mostly because, well, partially because it is something that can and does happen in real life, even though it's not the right way to do it. It would be dishonest to say it doesn't exist. But at the same time, I also felt that if you give a well executed example of the loving bully trope, it actually can teach some very important lessons. And that's what I feel was the case here with Loud House. Like Helga Pataki and Cindy Vortex before in Nickelodeon's past, I do feel Ronnie Anne Santiago is a well executed example of the loving bully trope. And she shows that, one, it's wrong to judge people solely by your first impression of them, and because first impressions are not always accurate. That doesn't mean they're never inaccurate, but at the same time, you'll never know if a first impression is accurate or inaccurate unless you bother to get to know someone beyond your first impression of them. And the other lesson is good people can make bad choices sometimes, but it doesn't mean they can't learn their lesson. Because real life is not cut and dry where only good people make good choices and only bad people make bad choices. In real life, good people can sometimes make the wrong choice, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that they're irredeemable or that they can't ever learn their lesson. And that's what we got to see here. And that's what I liked about Save the Date. It was a learning experience for both Lincoln and Ronnie Anne. Lincoln learned that he shouldn't judge Ronnie Anne solely by his first impression of her, and that there really is a kindred spirit beneath the rough exterior he's seen. On the other hand, though, Ronnie Anne learned the consequences of her less tactful means of expressing her feelings towards Lincoln, and learned that she actually can talk to and hang out with Lincoln without having to resort to such unflattering tactics. And yeah, that was what I felt personally about how I liked it. It didn't really, to me, it didn't vilify either one of them because, yeah, I didn't feel Lincoln was vilified for it. And as I mentioned before, I do think that some fans do kind of vilify Ronnie Anne a bit. Yeah, picking on Lincoln wasn't the right way to express her feelings, but at the same time, I'd say Lori threatening to crush Lincoln with an end table is much worse than Ronnie Anne putting a sloppy Joe in Lincoln's pants. And, oh, I might as well add this too, the fact that at the end, where it looked like Ronnie Anne still picked on Lincoln just to save appearance, that actually doesn't happen after that one time. In all future appearances with Ronnie Anne, she's shown to be very friendly with Lincoln and isn't afraid to show that in public. So, yeah, so even then, Ronnie Anne really did learn her lesson, and she's much better about, she's very on the ball about not backpedaling on learning her lesson. So that's why Ronnie Anne's initial two appearances, I know some people still don't like them, even though Ronnie Anne had made a change for the better, but to me, Ronnie Anne's initial appearances where she's not on good terms with Lincoln, that doesn't sour what I think about Ronnie Anne. Quite the contrary, I do have a better appreciation for the character because, yeah, it was shown that she made bad choices but learned her lesson, and she's been very good about not forgetting that lesson. So, to me, is why I consider Ronnie Anne to be one of my favorite characters on this show, and I'm definitely looking forward to talking about her other appearances in the future. And that was a bit of a mouthful, I admit, quite a lot to say, but I did have a lot I wanted to talk about here, and you can probably guess, between the two segments for episode 15, I do favor the B segment, but I still enjoyed the A segment a lot. And with that, episode 15 has now been discussed on this channel. Take care, and until next time.